Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another kind of somber edition of the channel here. We've got in the co-captain's chair from in the Prague seat, owner of Laser's Edge, Mr. Ken Golden.
Hey.
So today we're here to report on the passing of another one of our heroes who has left us, in many cases, we always say way too soon, but in the case of this gentleman, he was a robust 79 years old. We're talking about Evangelos Odysseus Papanasio. I think that's how he says his real name, otherwise known as Vangelis, born March 29th, 1943, actually passed away 2 days ago, May 17th, 2022, due to, I believe, heart complications while trying to recover from COVID. Yeah, COVID-19. So, and of course, Vangelis, probably long revered and beloved as someone who really helped spearhead new age music, electronic and ambient music, whatever you want to call it, progressive rock, certainly very early days, but a masterful keyboard player, musician, arranger, composer who has, I mean, if you look at his discography, right, Ken, it's ridiculous.
It's
tons
enormous.
and tons. Yeah.
It's enormous. Yeah.
Yeah, tons and tons of albums. So so a sad day for people who have followed this guy for many, many years. And myself personally, I've never really dabbled in his career all that much, quite honestly, other than this, that, Aphrodite's Child 666 album, which is a very early 70s symphonic rock concept album that he was a part of, played keyboards in this particular band. But I've heard, obviously he's done soundtrack work and all sorts of other things. So Ken, I don't know if you want to kind of expand a bit on some of his career.
So he started out late 60s with, it was in a band called the Forminks, which was I think like a psychedelic pop band. And that's how Aphrodite's Child really started out. Where they really got their shit together was with 666. This is, I think this was like the English cover. What Pete showed is like the pretty traditional looking cover. Double album, concept album. Many people, including myself, consider it to be a very important prog rock album. Has Irene Pappas, Greek actress, is on it. Side-long track. It's just like this complete epic. And he was a prodigious force on keyboards, great Hammond player, also a very, very good percussionist. And after Aphrodite's Child, the band basically broke up before the album was released. He started dabbling on soundtracks. He was doing like documentaries, low budget movies, sex power. I don't know. Jane Birkin's in it, so I don't know if this was like a softcore porn movie or what the story was. But this was like an early soundtrack he did, where he really started to get attention was with his solo work. This is an album I highly recommend to people. It's called Earth. It was released on Vertigo. And for me, this was a very important album for me. I grew up in New York City, and I used to listen to Alison Steele on WNEW on every night. She was the Nightbird. And very often she would open up with this track called We're All Uprooted, which was, you could almost say, like a precursor to New Age. Very, very psychedelic, very progressive, and very, very spacey. He started to get some notoriety. I have a stack of albums here, Peter. If it's okay, I'll go through some of these things and talk about some of this stuff. Sure. So he did these two very interesting albums. He went to London and he made this album called The Dragon and another one called Hypothesis. And these actually were jam sessions that he did with French violinist Michel Ripoche, Aphrodite's guitarist Silva Coulouris, and the rhythm section of Brian Augers and Tony Oxley, who played with John McLaughlin on Extrapolation. And they were just jam sessions, and they were released without his permission. He blocked the release. In fact, I think they were withdrawn, but ultimately they made it they made it into the public, and they're out there. And they're actually really, really interesting albums because they're like they're definitely prog rock. He's playing some killer Hammond organ on it. And he's also, but it's like there's elements of like free jazz, jazz rock. I mean, the guy, he was multifaceted. He could do, he could really do anything. Then he started doing more soundtracks. Can You Hear the Dogs Barking? I mean, this was, look at those keyboards.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So the thing where Vangelis really made his name was he was asked to audition for Yes when Rick Wakeman left after Tales from Topographic Oceans. So he went to London, and I think they were kind of overwhelmed. Apparently Steve Howe said they were overwhelmed by his strong personality. But the problem is he didn't want to tour. So he declined. He would have, no tapes have ever come out. I don't think anybody's ever heard what the rehearsal sounded like, but he declined the gig. And actually Pat Mraz went in and auditioned for Yes with Vangelis's keyboard set up. So, but he cultivated that relationship, and he started doing studio albums, and he did some very good. He signed with RCA Records. This was a great one he did called Heaven and Hell, and John Anderson is on it. John Anderson sings on it, and this was kind of like the beginning of the relationship, because years later they would put out albums together as John and Vangelis. So the thing about Vangelis is he's very different. He was a synthesizer player. He was just a multifaceted keyboard player, but very different from what we think of like guys like Klaus Schulze or Nigel Froese, the Berlin School, what we call the Berlin School. His music is much more symphonic, has a real cinematic quality to it. The closest I think he ever came to doing something that was like Berlin School was Albedo, like my old Corvette sticker, my old Corvette's record sticker, and then Spiral. These were like kind of like space rock, because the thing is he always, there was a very strong percussive element because he was a drummer as well. Bo Borg was a nice album, kind of spacey, a little more experimental. Then he got heavily into soundtracks. Soundtracks really, that became a big thing for him. Antarctica. What I'm showing you is like the tip of the iceberg. I mean, this is a guy with just a ridiculous, Opera Sauvage. There was another studio album, China, and like again, when you hear like an album like China, it's a concept piece. And it has like an East Asian feel to it. I mean, he was very interesting. See You Later was another one. But this one is the album where he became world famous. Chariots of Fire, the soundtrack. He won an Oscar for it. And, we still hear it like in commercials, right? And, the guy is he was like a machine. I'm sure a lot of people know the soundtrack he did for Blade Runner.
Oh, yep.
I mean, the guy was monumental. I don't have any show and tell for the albums he did with John Anderson, but like Friends of Mr. Cairo, if you like, it's a little on the light side, but somehow for me, John Anderson's vocals just sort of made it very well with Vangelis's music. So
they both have that ethereal quality to them, right?
Yeah,
his playing.
Yeah, and the thing that I liked about him, again, that sort of differentiates him from some of the other guys, is he wasn't just playing synthesizers. And what he did with the synthesizers was very different from what these other guys were doing. And it definitely, you could always find him. You walked into Tower Records, you could always find him in the New Age section, right? But but I think there was a real depth to his music. But again, you have to, I guess you have to like that. Not everybody's into the electronic music thing. But I think he was a very, very important influence on a lot of keyboard players. So I think we're seeing that today. You're seeing the rest in peace, from it's coming from everywhere. I think this is really, really hitting a lot of people. I think on top of Klaus Schultz from a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah, that's one after another. Yeah.
So the guy, he very rarely played live. I don't know if he ever played in the United States. I think he's only played like a handful of gigs. That wasn't his thing. But man, he was important, and he was still making albums. I think he had a studio album about a year ago, something like that.
Yeah, he's done a lot and very recently. Yeah.
So, I mean, if you wanted to explore his music, for me, I would recommend the Aphrodite's Child 666. I think that's a great prog rock album. There's some interesting parts to it, especially with Irene Pappas, where you get to hear her have an orgasm, and she actually has an orgasm. They recorded her having an orgasm, and definitely Heaven and Hell. Those 70s albums are great. If you're an audiophile, this Blade Runner will absolutely blow your mind. It's extraordinary. And I mean, for me, he was an important part of my interest in prog rock. It's interesting to hear him play and kind of imagine what he would have sounded like in Yes.
Yeah, right. Just think about that.
Yeah.
On paper, it seems like it would totally fit.
Yeah. I mean, but as I said, they said he apparently he was just too much for them to handle, and he didn't want to tour. So
well, that was a deal breaker, right? That's
yeah. So
well, if he, you just think, what if, right? If he had joined and stayed, we might not have gotten Relayer the way Relayer is how we know it, right? So
right, and yeah, I mean, apparently they had that material, but it would be interesting to hear what that audition sounded like. Yeah. I would have liked to, and I would have liked to have heard him do something else, like within like a group context. There was one other thing he did. There was a Greek band called Socrates, and Socrates was more of a hard rock band.
That's Socrates Drank the Chronium, right?
Socrates Drank, and he was on their last album called Foss. I just kind of remember that, and it was great because he added another element to that band. It took them. They're still more of a hard rock band, but he's veered them into a progressive direction. I mean, not to my mind, not somebody that should be overlooked. I wouldn't randomly just start picking up all his soundtracks, because, well, it's the nature of soundtracks,
Yeah.
There's some better than others. But definitely like his 70s albums, I would, if you come across them, I think you want to check them out.
Cool. All right. So like you said, Vangelis or Vengelis. Gone 79.
Americans say Vangelis, but apparently it's Vangelis.
Vangelis, yeah. So another one gone. 1943 to 2022, May 17th. Rest in peace, Vangelis.
Yep.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Let us know what you think of this great musician down in the comments below. And I want to thank Ken for coming on today and help us out with some additional color about the man's career. And it's greatly appreciated. So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube, all together, all the damn time. For Ken Golden, I am Pete Pardo. Rest in peace, Vangelis. And we'll see you all later on. Take care.